Today we're going to look at this guy here, which is the VECYS, or VECYS, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, CR18 compressor-based refrigerator freezer. It's, size for a vehicle is the idea here, although you could use it in a dorm room. So I got this thing, it was delivered, fulfillment by Amazon. When it arrived, the box was completely upside down in the Amazon shipping box. And there's a big thing on the top here that says, don't turn it upside down and leave it for 24 hours before use. Because it's a compressor-based refrigerator, it has oil in the compressor, and that should be at the bottom, and it uses gravity for that. So if you flip it upside down, it goes to the wrong spot. You don't want that. So I've had this sitting upright for 48 hours just to give it a chance for the oil to drop back down to where it's supposed to be. So hopefully that's enough. I'm going to open it up, and we're going to take a look at it.
The fridge is surrounded by styrofoam in the box, which isn't great for the environment, but holds things securely and pads it well. The lid is taped down, and the wall adapter and car plug are in an accessory box inside. It also includes a manual, which is better than many I've seen. I especially appreciate the expanded parts diagram and wiring diagram, which are nice to have. I peeled protective film off the display and a sticker telling you to keep the lid closed from under the handle indent. This is an 18-liter fridge. Here you can see me putting 12 350 milliliter, also known as 12-ounce drink cans inside. You can easily fit a 4x3 grid of cans with extra space, but the fridge isn't quite large enough inside to fit 5 cans wide or 4 cans deep. There is a small bump out area available for storage right above the compressor, but it's just slightly smaller than a standard soda can. I found it works well for sandwich or snack bars. I like the latch system. It can be easily opened with a single hand without needing to hold the fridge body down. However, it doesn't easily auto-latch when you close the lid. You can get it to latch by absolutely slamming the lid down, but the amount of force needed felt excessive, so I would always just squeeze the latch when closing the lid. The top of the lid has a single round depression, presumably for placing a drink. When I first saw this, I went, whatever, but after taking the fridge to an outdoor event where I was sitting next to it on a chair drinking Gatorade and fizzy water, the feature grew on me. Now I'm wondering, why not have 2 of them?
Actual measurements, 22.5 width. We have 12.5 inches depth. And just a hair under 12 inches height, say 11 3/4 height. But keep in mind, in actual operation, you're going to have to add another inch almost, or 2.5 centimeters for air clearance and for the plug. The AC power plug is just about the same size as the DC power plug. So this guy has nicely molded handles underneath and inside. This side over here is a lot heavier because the compressor is down in that side. It's especially noticeable when the fridge is empty. I have 12 containers of soda, 12-ounce containers of soda in here, and it's a little more even, but I'd say this left side over here with the control panel, or your right, is just a little bit heavier, even with a decent amount of soda in there. I like how the handles are molded inside of the refrigerator. And on this side over here, the handle's in the compressor area. But this handle here had to cut into the insulating foam. And so if you reach in there, especially when this is in freezer mode, it feels cool, which means a little bit of heat is escaping. It also felt a little bit wet to me. So there's just a tiny bit of condensation that's forming there under the handle. You can see the water here. It's not enough to actually drip out, but right in the top of the handle, where it's closest to the interior volume, the insulation is thinner because the handle goes in, and so it does lose a little bit of the coldness out through that handle. And a little bit of water condenses up there when it's in freezer mode, at least. I haven't noticed anything dripping out, so it's just a very small amount there, but that's just something to be aware of. Alright, I'm going to put 4 cans of soda in here, give it something to cool down, and come back and check on it in 3 or 4 hours. So in addition to the 4 containers of soda I have in there to give it something to chill down, I'm going to put a tiny little dish with water. That'll make it easier for me to put a temperature probe in and just see what the ambient temperature is in there. Right now it's drawing 51 point some watts. So the fridge is rated at 45 watts. Either the power adapter's drawing a couple of extra watts for its power operation, or the fridge is just drawing a little bit higher than its rating. But it still has looked like, maximum here about 50-55 watts. So the power factor is 0.09 right now, but it's not really drawing any power because it's just running the display. Let's see, watts is 0.8 watts. So this power supply doesn't have a super great power factor when it's idle, but it's not drawing too much. It's less than a watt. So, it's more phantom draw than I would like to see from a power supply. But once you turn the fridge on, that 0.8 watt idle load isn't going to be an issue. So far the fridge has used 50 watt hours, and that's the power used to bring the 4 cans down to the current temperature. And it's been running for 4 hours and 8 minutes. So the temperature inside the fridge, maybe we'll just say 40 degrees. Let me open one of these. This is the one that's farthest away from the compressor. So yeah, 39, 40 degrees, chilled down. The set temperature was 35. I'm not sure if I leave these in here overnight if it's going to get down to 35 or not. We'll check it tomorrow morning. Overnight, this thing is gone for 15 hours, and it has consumed 140 watt hours. So, temperature of my beverage inside. Is actually lower than the set point. The set point's 35 Fahrenheit. This guy here is, well, it says it's 30.7, but it's not frozen. 31. So it's slightly above freezing, but definitely close to the 35 degree set point. It's always possible my thermometer is off by a couple of degrees too. I have set the set point to 0 centigrade, which is a little bit low for refrigeration, but is about as low as you'd ever want to go for refrigeration. We're going to reset the kilowatt meter, and I don't have much inside, just a couple of containers of water for doing temperature sensing at the end. So this is a test. We're going to go 24 hours and basically see how much power it takes to maintain this temperature. And current ambient temperature is 77 Fahrenheit. For those of you in centigrade world, that is 25 centigrade. Although you really, there we go, 25 centigrade.
After running for 24 hours, the total energy use was 190 watt hours. 190 watt hours divided by 12 volts is 16 amp hours on a 12 volt battery. Although if you were using a lead acid one, you'd need a 32 amp hour battery to run the fridge for 24 hours without discharging your battery below the recommended 50%.
So it's been maintaining at 0 centigrade or 32, kind of refrigeration temperature. It has not been opened for that time. So if you were opening and closing your fridge and heat was getting in, you would obviously need a little more power.
The interior temperature remained right above freezing.
We are going to lower the set point to as low as it goes. This is kind of freezer mode, negative 20 centigrade. That's about 0 Fahrenheit. So this thing's going to turn on and start going down. I'm going to wait until it's actually cooled down to the frozen temperature before I reset my watt meter and timer. So we're going to look at how much energy it takes to maintain frozen, not to get down to the frozen. The set point on this is -20 centigrade, which is -4 Fahrenheit, or freezing, as cold as it goes. My ice in the cup and the jar here are frozen, and you know it's down to -14, -15 inside there, so we're basically about the temperature it's set to. So I am resetting my kilowatt meter, and we will check back in 24 hours, and that will be a test of how much power it takes to keep this thing frozen for 24 hours, or basically how much energy it loses just sitting there. Alright, this thing has been keeping freezing temperatures for 24 hours, and to do that it took 520 watt hours, or half of a kilowatt hour. If you divide that by 12, you get 43 amps. So at a 12 volt system, it would take 43 amps to do this for a day. That means if you're using a lead acid battery, you probably want a 86 amp battery to run this thing in freezer mode for a day. I've had my thermometer just stuck in there for 24 hours. So the interior temperature is -14.5 according to this guy, which is, you know, close to the -17, -20, definitely freezing temperatures. Now, there is some frost building up here. You can see where the coils wrap around this case, and obviously I had liquid-filled containers in this guy for 2 days, 1 day refrigeration and 1 day freezing, so that had a lot of chance for frost to build up in addition to the humidity in the air. So we're going to defrost this thing. To do that, you just turn it off and leave it open. So we leave this open. They make a special note in the manual that you should not turn this upside down because it has a compressor in there and you don't want to turn the compressor upside down. So after this frost melts into water, we'll need to wipe it out with a paper towel or a sponge.
While testing the fridge with the temp display set to Fahrenheit, I noticed that every time the compressor turned off, the temperature display would go wonky. When in fridge mode, it would jump from 35 degrees Fahrenheit to 104. When testing in freezer mode, it would jump from -4 Fahrenheit up to 25 or 35 Fahrenheit.
Alright, compressor turned off. It jumped immediately to -25 Fahrenheit, which I doubt this fridge can actually get down to, and it certainly doesn't do it instantaneously.
The fridge was working correctly and maintaining the correct temperature, but something was going funky with the displayed temperature. I reported this to VECYS customer support, and they acknowledged they had a problem with their centigrade to Fahrenheit conversion code in the display unit, and that they would be fixing it for future units. So I plan on using this fridge with the centigrade scale so that the temperature displayed is always accurate. But as I said, the temperature control works just fine. It was only the display that would sometimes go funky right after the set point was reached and the compressor turned off.
Alright, next test is the 1 liter of water. I have 2 pounds. It's a gel pack, so it's not perfect water, but basically it's water. And we are going to put it in there and turn it on and see how long it takes to freeze and how much power it takes. Alright, every time I do one of these tests, it reminds me how much energy and time it takes to freeze water. So it's been 18 hours, and we've used 470 watt hours. This guy is almost, but not completely frozen. There's like a little center part right in here that's still mushy. You know, all this down here is all solid. You know, so it's freezing from the outside, but right in the center there's a little bit of mush. And it, you know, kind of goes about that big of an area. So, on we go. Alright, it's been 24 hours. We have 610 watt hours used, 0.61 kilowatt hours. And this guy is pretty well solid, man, with the exception of a tiny little quarter-shaped area here that's still a little bit wiggly, and I don't know how far in it goes, but it's pretty darn small. So I think we can say in 24 hours it freezes the kilogram, 2 pounds of water. Alright, I'm taking this thing out for a day in the town. Got 6 Gatorades, 6 12-ounce cans, 2 of these guys, 2 big Gatorades. Of course, you can't forget your necessities. Nice little place for sandwiches. Heck, if I wanted to, I could even put this frozen pack in there. Use it kind of like a cooler, not even plug it in. Alright, I have the pop-up canopy chair, water bottle weights in the back, this seat pushed almost all the way up, and it still fits lengthwise in the front. Alright, we're out and about at the electric car show, and this guy is very nice. I've got my Ego inverter and battery here, and we're maintaining -2 centigrade, although I'm not sure if you can read that in the sunlight. So, all my Gatorade and stuff is staying nice and cool. This is my Ego Nexus Escape inverter. It's a square wave inverter, so I don't really recommend it, but it works fine for power supplies like this. It's attached to a 7.5 amp hour Ego battery. And just got back from the vent. We were out in the sun for 4 hours. It ran this refrigerator the whole time, and we were in 80 to 87 degree Fahrenheit weather, and it kept it -2 centigrade, so at refrigeration temperatures the whole time, and we didn't even use everything up. I had thrown an ice pack in because I didn't bother plugging this in while I was driving, and the ice pack is basically still frozen, and the remaining drinks are still cold, so it did its job. My Ego battery and inverter have been running this fridge for 11 hours. I don't know when it's going to stop, but I expect it to happen overnight. Okay, time for the ice cream challenge. I have a thing of ice cream. Current temperature of the ice cream is -14.5 centigrade. I have the fridge set here to -20. We're going to leave it in there for probably a day. See how it does. My wife thinks I'm making a YouTube video about refrigerators. And really, I'm hiding the ice cream. Let's see, we are at -12.5 degrees centigrade, which is not quite as cold as when I put it in, but pretty close, within a couple of degrees. That's still 9.5 Fahrenheit. Well, maybe you can see better if I wipe that off. And the ice cream in here is a little soft. Not badly soft, but it's definitely softer than my home refrigerator or home freezer keeps it. I've scooped a few scoops here so you can see, it's still pretty firm. This last experiment is going to use this guy as a cooler. Now I realize it's not a cooler. The whole point of it is it's actively cooling, and coolers have a lot more insulation than this guy typically. But maybe you drive around during the day, you have it refrigerated, but at night you don't want to run a battery down, you don't like the noise of it next to your head when you're sleeping, whatever. So say you drove all day, you have it cooled down, but you're going to park, sleep overnight, and not have it powered. So you have a 6-pack, say, in here of water, because water stores cool or heat very well, and maybe some extra meat and cheeses in there as well. So right now it's at -0.4 degrees centigrade, so basically freezing temperatures. Let's see, 31.3 Fahrenheit. So this is still liquid, but it's basically real close there to freezing. And we will see what happens in 8 hours. Alright, 8 hours, 38 minutes later. We are at 51 degrees Fahrenheit. That is 10.8 centigrade.
So going above 40 degrees isn't great for meat and cheese. I think I'd want to have some ice inside to use as a cooler, or, power it as a refrigerator overnight.
If you can, it's better to put food that's already cooled down in it and have it maintain the temperature than to use it to cool things down. You can set the temperature as high as 20 degrees centigrade, which is 68 Fahrenheit. So it can be used to chill wine or keep cosmetics at a set temperature, or anything that needs to be set at a particular temperature below about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Overall, it does a good job keeping food cool, and it doesn't draw too much power, and it looks pretty nice.